Okay, so we're recording. So here we are at our third section of the Wild Bill Swim Open Water interview series. And today we've got Ned Denison. And I'm going to just introduce him briefly because he's got so many achievements that it's impossible to list them right here. You can Google him on Open Waterpedia. But he is a very accomplished American-born, Ireland residing open water swimmer. He is included in the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame and is an honor contributor there. He's done events and created trios of events like the breakaways, swimming the 3 prisons around the world, and all kinds of things that haven't been done before. He's now on the board of directors
Jen, you just froze.
Yeah, am I back?
You're back. You froze for a minute.
Yeah, okay, that's gonna happen. I can't help that. I'm out here lakeside. I got the best internet I can. I had to fix last week, and that's what we have to handle. Shouldn't happen too often. Anyway, so we're gonna start with, I'm gonna ask Ned. So I would love for you to share with us one of your favorite anecdotes from one of your many open water swims.
So a few years ago, I was looking for something for Christmas time. And I had been kicked by marathon honoree Kevin Murphy a number of years ago. And he said that I should swim across False Bay in South Africa. In False Bay, for people that aren't aware of it, it's 20 miles by 20 miles or 30K by 30K. It's absolutely full of fish because they don't allow nets. There's 200,000 seals. And at the time, there were 200 resident great white sharks. And it's not a particularly popular place to swim. So I went down, I think the day after Christmas, the day before Christmas. I said to the boat pilot, I'm not going to get a perfect day. We understand that. I want a day that's possible. And I think this is, I'll come back to this in just a minute, but it's kind of the difference in the sport. If you want a perfect day, go to the swimming pool. There 4 people had done the swim successfully before me. And it was one of those swims where you don't watch the Discovery Channel for a couple of months before you go down and do the swim, because you don't really want to see sharks in action. You don't take the shark tour a couple of days before you go swimming. And I'm not sure my head was ever my best weapon in a swim, but for this swim, my head was never stronger. And it absolutely had to be. So I did a couple of swims alone in False Bay for the previous couple of days with all the Jaws music playing in my head. And when the actual time for the swim came, we had, of course, the safety boats and people watching after me and all that good stuff. They said, yeah, the conditions look good now, but it will freshen up in the afternoon. And for people who aren't aware of the lingo, freshen up always means big waves and typically the wind in your face. And from a lot of ocean swims, it always freshens up in the afternoon. You get unequal heating. There were a couple of incidents during the swim, so I really didn't need the seal that swam across the back of my legs. You really don't need to touch a giant piece of kelp that doesn't move. You really don't need to touch something that seemingly swims away. Yeah. And when I stopped for my one of my feeds, there was a picnic of seals broke out, I would say 5 meters away from me. And they're the primary food of the great white sharks. And I was thinking to myself, it reminded me of Christmas in Vermont when one of our relatives would bring this horrific onion dish. And my father would warn us ahead of time, you are going to eat some of the onions and you are going to tell her it's wonderful. And I was just thinking to myself, okay, you are the onion and the great white shark doesn't have to eat you. The great whites there grow to about 7 meters in size, which is more than 20 feet. Mm-hmm. And they're not shaped like a cigar. They're more shaped like a squat fire hydrant, which means they can kind of eat you across your 6-foot+ body. They don't need to get you from behind or the front.
Right.
The most difficult part mentally was at one point out in the middle of nowhere where there's no islands and nothing. The boat seemingly hit something big, dove down to its left. Everybody fell down. And I'm thinking, the only thing I could think of is a 7-meter great white shark. As it turned out, a steering column bolt broke on the back of the boat, and everybody fell down, and they got it repaired. They were dragging a shark shield. At one point, somebody came and was tapping on it. Another point, the guy came out with a screwdriver and took it apart, took the batteries away. He came back later, put some different batteries in, and then he kind of shrugged his shoulders like, I don't know if this thing's working or not. I did complete the swim, 11 hours and change. And for anyone who watches sports shows, there's a visualization I did. So in the sports show, they play a bit of clip of sports. The quarterback throws the ball, or the soccer player crosses the ball, and somebody goes up and they stop the clip and they ask the panel what happened next. And you're supposed to guess. So my visualization was be swimming along, and a great
somebody
white
caught the ball,
comes up out of the depth and takes me. And I've got one hand on either side of its jaws, and it brings me all the way up 7 meters in the air, all videotaped. And they stop the tape. And they say, what happens next? And then everybody takes their guess, and they play the rest of the tape, and they say, so I start punching the shark while it's going down. And the answer is, he finished the last 10 miles of the swim. So I guess I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't have that clip, but at the same time, a bit relieved. After the swim, I got a couple of text messages. One text message was somebody that said, basically, you lucky SOB, I've been waiting 15 years for a perfect day out there, a local. And I thought to myself, and you never got in the water in 15 years. Another guy sent me a great text, which I have copied in the future. And he simply said, I am jealous, which was one of the most honest things anybody's ever said. And then finally, years later, we were sitting at lunch and somebody asked me the question, did you see any great white sharks? And I said, I didn't see any. And the South African guy at the table said, don't worry, they saw you. It's been done once since, so there's now 6 of us in the world that have done it. The great whites are now gone. A couple of orcas have come in and have been slicing open the stomach of the great white and eating the livers. So the great whites, 200 of them have departed in mass. So now there's just a couple of hungry orcas out there.
Wow. Now there's only orcas.
Who knows?
Yeah. So I live in Vancouver, so orcas are a thing, but they have never been known to hurt a person where we are. So
you were
too
the
small,
onion
maybe.
dish at Christmas.
I guess so. But I think one thing I'd like to expand upon that you mentioned here is that your mental game was really on point. And I know in some of the YouTubes that I've watched of you, you say, I think I've heard you say, correct me if I'm wrong, that you consider yourself a mental coach rather than an English Channel swimming coach, because that aspect is so important.
So things will happen. If you want consistency, stay in the swimming pool. When you're out in the open, things will happen. And we talk about a few of those things, but recently, one of the propellers in the English Channel got caught in a lobster pot rope, and the swimmer needed to swim around the boat for 15 minutes while they tried to get the propeller undone. Right. So always things will happen. And I say to the swimmer, you only ever have the same 3 options. You cry for your mommy, you can get out, or you can keep swimming. Those choices never change. And it doesn't matter what it is. The crew forgot to bring your feed. They dropped the feed overboard. You hit a giant smack of jellyfish. You hit an oil slick. It's always you throw up. It's always those 3 decisions. Which one are you going to pick? Cry for your mommy, get out, or keep swimming.
Well, I always
Never
say
change.
you need three choices to make it to have a choice. So at least there's three, right? So, and I think, I mean, obviously, there's some more experienced people listening, but there's also the people who are going to be swimming in this lake here, and they don't have those massive issues that could happen, but there are weeds, and maybe they have never experienced weeds. Maybe they've never experienced water that they can't see the bottom, or that they can't see too far in front of them, depending on the day. Maybe it's windy. Maybe, as you said, it's never, I mean, you can try and make it as perfect as possible. You can get up for a lake at 6 o'clock in the morning and swim when it's more calm. You can not swim when there's lots of boats around. You can not swim when it's, really windy. But there are always things going to happen. And also not only external things, internal things in your body that you don't expect to happen, and you don't have the wall of a pool next to you to keep you safe.
So in the lake swim for the first time swimmers, there's guaranteed to be two things that will happen. The first thing that happens is you'll get beat up at the start unless you're clever.
Yeah.
And the second thing is your goggles will probably come off your head.
Mm-hmm.
And the trick on the first one is either be in front and swim faster than everybody.
Yeah.
Or let them all go for 30 seconds and go last, go off to the side, whatever it is, or just enjoy the contact. I did a big swim in Spain. There were 700 people in a 6.5K swim. I was right in front. I played water polo for 20 years. So I'm not afraid of a little bit of contact.
Right.
Just about everybody had wetsuits. Mm-hmm. And there was tremendous contact in that first 2-3 minutes. I loved every minute of it. My goggles got kicked off twice. I deserved it each time. And, I was having a great time out there. But if you're not used to that contact, you don't want to be in the middle of that pack. Mm-hmm. And likewise, if you're not used to kind of diving in the water with goggles, don't. Mm-hmm. The last race I did, I was an elevated platform. I stepped into the water. I gave everybody a 10-second head start. My goggles were secure.
Yeah.
And
swim around them. Yeah. And I think that's really important, is that you have to stay, at least the first time in the beginning, stay within your comfort zone and see what happens and know what to expect. And I was interviewing yesterday with a guy named Bill Ruth, and he says, because we're trying to get more young swimmers, club swimmers, high school swimmers, because it's fun. Once they get in the water and they understand how fun it is to go from buoy to buoy, it's fun. And the contact, the realizing that, okay, there's all these people around you, you probably swim a lot better than them. So just get them out of the way. So pull them or go to the side or do what you need to do. But it's exciting, different than diving off a starting block and doing flip turn.
Pulling them would generally be considered cheating. However,
it happens.
A body check is fine. Swimming over the top of them is fine as long as you don't pull them back. Right. Swimming on top of their legs is fine as long as you're not pulling. Yeah. And the other thing I would say to young swimmers is understand what you're doing out there. If your idea is to finish the course nice and comfortable, then when you have contact, get out of the way or go in the back and work your way through. If your idea is to win the race, fine. But we get people in the middle. And I just find this amusing where they say, this is absolutely not a race for me. I'm not racing. I'm just going out to enjoy the event. But my brother-in-law is not beating me. And I go, okay, it's a race.
Yeah, it's a race. That's right. And you can't tell where anybody is. You don't know who's next to you, in front of you, behind you. It's not like the pool that way. So whoever your brother-in-law is, you got to beat everybody to make sure you beat him.
Buy your brother-in-law a really bright set of jammers and wear black Speedos yourself. So you'll know where he is.
Yeah, exactly.
He won't see you.
Yeah, exactly. That's fun. So could you talk a little bit about, I know that volunteering is a really important aspect of what we wanted to talk about today. And we've been really blessed in our swim that it's something so new and novel that all the people on the lake who don't usually volunteer for anything are all volunteering. So we've got a lot of response, which has been I'm overwhelmingly grateful for that. But there's lots of swims out there where people don't have enough volunteers to be supported in the water. And there's a lot of individual swimmers who like to do events like some of the ones you were talking about that need a crew. And to me, that's really exciting to be able to do something like that. So how do you find those things? How would you suggest people go about that?
So the first thing I would say to people is, when you're in an event like the one you have coming up, and there's all these volunteers, first of all, thank everybody twice. Okay, because you are just a prima donna swimmer who has a morning laid out for you by a whole bunch of people giving up their time.
Yeah.
They're not getting paid, and if anything goes wrong, somebody will be the first one to criticize them. So thank everybody you see. The second thing is that ask yourself as a swimmer, why are these volunteers doing this? Okay. Sometimes they're raising money for charity. Sometimes it's just because it's a local thing. Sometimes they've got a husband, wife, child, parent in the event. I did something a few years ago. I made a calculator for English Channel swimmers, and they answered some questions. And it came out with, fine, you swam the English Channel, congratulations. You now owe X number of volunteer days. And it was coming out with numbers between 50 and 150 volunteer days. And people were saying, this can't be right, Ned. And he said, well, hang on a second. You flew from Australia to England for 10 days. You brought 3 people with you. You didn't pay them. They were in England forever. And then you had your 6-hour swim, and then you were in Rottnest, and you did this and that and whatever. And it just added them all up. And the numbers are huge. So let me tell you what the volunteers do. Everybody in a boat with a propeller is a volunteer. So somebody is piloting the boat, bless you, piloting the boat and terrified about running into a swimmer or having a swimmer come into contact with a propeller. They're terrified. Then you've got probably 2 spotters in the boat who are looking for swimmers in distress. Sorry, but some swimmers always look like they're in distress. Their stroke is so bad, they look like they're drowning the entire time they're swimming. Yes. So those people are under pressure. Then you've got kayakers. And the kayaker's job is to kind of navigate people, keep them on course. And when somebody goes down, the kayaker's job is to go, they went down over there. So not to jump in the water and save them, and not to have a panic swimmer hug them, and all of a sudden you have a couple of people in the water.
Right.
Then you've got people checking in and out. So at the end of your event, you're supposed to be accounting for pretty much everybody's out. And if you're missing 3, it's a real problem. There's a registration. There might be somebody giving out the shirts and the caps, and somebody, desperate to get a medium when they put in large and it didn't fit, and somebody's lost the cap. Then there's the hundreds of hours to set up the event. And of course, everybody wants the results pushed out to their phone and on the website, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the volunteers, without the volunteers, the event simply doesn't happen. So what I would say to swimmers is, after you've done 3 or 4 or 5 events or before, volunteer. For solo swims, you talked about the crew.
Yep.
I've got some colleagues who hope to do a big epic relay. I'm the observer in the Atlantic Ocean for probably 20 hours, throwing up.
Yeah.
Do I really want to be doing this observation for these folks? It's probably not the top of my list, but they need an observer. I fit the bill, and I'm now the observer. There'll also be people on the boat who are in charge of feeding them, heating the water, whatever it's going to be. There's going to be a crew on the boat in addition to swimmers. So it's really easy to volunteer. Every swim event organizer loves volunteers. They'll find something for you to do.
Yeah, true.
I ran an event recently. It's a 9-day event in Ireland. And one of the swimmers I came in early. We had these two porta toilets. I came in early on the third day and he was cleaning the toilet. It was kind of my job was to clean the toilet. And I thought to myself, I just love this swimmer. Whatever this guy wants to do for the rest of his life, I will help him. He is, volunteering, cleaning toilets. That's well beyond the scope of what needs to be done. When I had 70 swimmers coming in the morning, kind of hoping the toilets would be clean.
Yeah.
I had the gloves on, I had the spray, the paper, the whole lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, well, people, it's like having a good boss. The best bosses are the ones who just do what needs to be done if nobody else is doing it. They don't think of them at a different level. So I think that that's really important. That's great to hear. And I hope that all my people out there understand that when they start to do.
Let me just add one thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's two kinds of events. There's the ones staffed by volunteers and the ones staffed by professionals who are all getting paid. Okay, you don't have to thank them as profusely. They're the people waiting at the airport with a sign with your name. They're the ones that chauffeur you to the hotel. They're the ones that wake you up. They're the ones that, offer to put the grease on you. Those are professional events and they cost thousands of dollars to do.
Okay.
How much is the average swimmer paying for your event? Can I ask?
35 to $50.
It's not a professional event.
Definitely
They're not paying for all those people.
No, definitely not. No. And our volunteers, my hope, and it seems to be the rumor in the group, is that they're all going to jump in the water and do the short swim at the end. We'll just cycle through them. So I think that that's a great way to get them to experience both sides. Yeah. So could you tell us a little bit about your English Channel swim camp, because that was an intense video I watched on YouTube about that whole thing one day.
So we run something called the Cork Distance Week. I think where this is our 13th year just completed. The week is 9 days. It's really simple. You never actually know how long your long swim is going to take. So we call it a week and we go 9 days.
Okay.
It's held in County Cork, a town called Kinsale in Ireland. The water is always colder than the English Channel. And our primary course is around an island called Sandy Cove Island.
Yeah.
It's about a 1 mile lap. And in that 1 mile, the temperature difference of the water can be 6, 7, 8, 9 degrees in spaces.
Wow.
So you're swimming along and all of a sudden the temperature just drops.
Yeah.
And you don't know if that's going to be for the entire session. You don't know if it's going to warm up in 10 meters, 10 yards away. You just don't know. So again, it's those three questions: cry for your mommy, get out, or keep swimming.
Right.
This last year, we had about 70 swimmers from all over the world: Australia, India, America, Germany, Italy, Kazakhstan. About 30% of them were English Channel swimmers. And a number of them were new marathoners, aspiring marathoners.
Right.
And we're typically swimming twice a day for a couple hours each session.
Yeah.
And there's always surprises that come up because we want people to deal with those surprises.
Right.
Particularly for the English Channel, what happens is the swimmers are aiming for a point of land called Cap Grenay in France. And if anybody's ever had a garden hose and put their thumb on the end of it to make the water go faster, that's what happens at Cap Grenay. It sticks out in the channel, it squeezes the water, and the currents in front of the cap are just tremendous.
Wow.
You can't swim against them. And you can be 100 meters from France and not make it.
Wow.
Or you can be 100 meters and take another 5 hours as it sweeps you back out into the English Channel.
Wow.
There's almost nothing in our sporting career or our life that's the same. So, the football game goes 4 quarters and maybe there's an extra time, but it doesn't go into the next day.
No.
And in the Boston Marathon, I know there's Heartbreak Hill, but the road doesn't move backwards in Heartbreak Hill.
Right.
In our
So like
sport,
the
the water can move backwards.
Wow.
So things happen.
Yeah.
And as an example, within a week of that, so during the event, we had one of our previous attendees was in English Channel. She aborted her swim within a half a mile of France.
Wow.
The tide had turned. She was going to be swept away. It was going to be another 5 or 6 hours.
Mhm.
We had a week after, we had somebody in the Bristol Channel. The conditions went crazy in the middle of a swim. It was aborted.
Yeah.
We had a 19-year-old swimmer completed the channel. On the same day, we had a 59-year-old guy from Ireland complete the channel. One was pretty fast and one wasn't so fast.
Yeah.
But we had, everybody watching these tracks, WhatsApp groups going crazy. And during that 9-day period, for people who are training alone, they show up and all of a sudden there's 3 people who are exactly their speed. One of the guys from Ireland, he swam at the same speed as one of the women from Russia. And the 2 of them were absolutely inseparable in the water and really enjoyed the experience of having somebody the same pace. The last day is a 6-hour qualifier for the English Channel. And what happens is when people start to struggle at 4 or 5 hours, their buddies who aren't doing the 6-hour swim jump in and say things like, you're not getting out. Come with me.
Yeah.
We're going again.
Yeah, we're here for this. Come on.
We're here for it.
Yeah. And that's different in open water swimming than pool swimming, because in pool swimming, you're just in the water by yourself. Nobody can get in the water with you. And open water swimming is such an individual event. I mean, your mindset has to be, I'm going to swim 5 miles today and I'm on my own, or, there's somebody watching you from the dock or something like that, but you just have to get out and do it. And it's very similar to triathlons in that way. I think long distance triathlons in that way, but that ability to abort a swim when you really know this is the time to stop, that I think is a lesson that can go in and not feel that you failed, is a lesson that can be incredibly important in all areas of life. And there's very few ways to learn that.
We call it DNF, do not fear failure.
Yeah.
Almost all marathon swimmers have had some failures. The guy I mentioned, Kevin Murphy, with 34 English Channel crossings, the great failure in his life, and he's still haunted by it, is he was going for a 3-way English Channel back in the day.
Right.
So we went over to France, fine, took him a little longer than he thought. Back to England, took a little longer than he thought. And on the 3rd leg, the conditions completely went crazy. And the boat captain got to the side of the boat and said, Kevin, I know you're fine. I'm worried about the safety of my boat and the people in the boat. You need to get out now. So at 52 hours, his swim was called. And Kevin still looks at it as a failure. And I think, what people need to understand is that, things will happen. Conditions will change. Currents will pick up. There was a famous swim in Arizona called SCAR, and you swim between dams on this creek, which has been dammed off. During the day, they run hydropower, and at night they pump the water back up using nuclear power.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of swimming downstream. Well, on the 2nd day, the water was still being pumped. So about half the swimmers got out after 400 yards. It's a 10-mile swim or something, 400 yards, because they couldn't beat the current, which was going uphill.
Right.
No one had expected that current.
Yeah.
And I guess what I would have said to the swimmers ahead of time is, okay, you know what currents do. You don't want to be in the middle. You want to be on the side.
Exactly.
And somebody's artificially pumping water. At some point, they will stop. So even if you swim in place for an hour, don't let your head get crazy. Keep swimming. Right. Something will change.
Yeah, that's that again, that's that ability to control, even for people doing a 3-mile swim for the first time, at 1.5 miles, they're like, wow, I feel this. Oh, but I can see my buoy. Then they can just go buoy to buoy, watch yourself go buoy to buoy, pass each house, that mental capacity. And well, and the opposite can happen too. The woman, I can't remember her name, who just went from Ireland, Scotland and back, it was expected to be one
Sarah
way.
Thomas.
Yes, it was expected to be one way, but the conditions were so perfect, she went both ways. Unusual.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but she did go both ways, and she expected 2 things up there. She expected the water to be very cold. Now we're experiencing a bit of a heat wave, and she's really, really good in the cold. And she was expecting something called lion's mane's jellyfish, which are particularly nasty, venomous jellyfish. For your listeners, they're kind of the size of garbage can lids, the tops of garbage cans, with tentacles everywhere. And when the tentacles break off, they float and they still have stings. I got a small sting in my arm 2 years ago from a lion's mane. And for a day and a half, I'd have a towel under my arm because it was just weeping.
Wow.
Some liquid was weeping out of my arm. Her entire body was stung. And then she got on a plane like a day later. I can't imagine how the swim was probably a joy compared to that plane ride to fly back to Colorado from Ireland.
Right. It's just, everybody just stay in the water. It's nicer in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. It's been really fun to talk to you and get to know you a little bit. I'm fascinated about the English Channel School. Living in Vancouver, there's a lot of open water swimmers. There's ones training for the channel. I think her attempt started this past weekend. There's, and they swim all year round, no wetsuit, which people here in Massachusetts think is like, how can they do that? But you acclimatize to it and you get your thing, you get your groove. So everybody's got their thing. So
just one thing on that, there are probably at least 10 distance training programs around the world. I hear really good things about all of them. The one we run is just a little different. They all have some differences. And if you put 10 swimmers together with a big swim goal and they swim together for 5 days, you'll generally have a good result. Doesn't matter where it is in the world, what the program is, you put those people together with the same mindset and they'll enjoy each other.
Yeah. So it's funny because that's a little bit how this swim started. The swim started for a couple of different reasons. One, because as my dad was in his last period, he became friends with another anesthesiologist. My dad was also one who was also a swimmer. And so after my dad passed, he sponsored a local swim teacher in another lake to give all these kids swimming lessons. And we got all these drawings and cards and thank yous. And so that started in my mind, like, well, I could have done that. I love to teach little kids to swim. And then I started swimming with a couple of different people in this lake. And we set the goal that summer to swim 3 miles, which none of us had, well, one of them had done it before. And so together we did it. And that's exactly what happened. It's just, well, of course we're going to do it. There's no doubt. It just became fun. And it was fun to be with each other, 3 different speeds and, the paddle boarders around. And so that's where the whole thing came in, is if we can start, and from the end of the summer and from next year, I'm going to start to like a once a week group here on this lake so that people can start to meet others, because people are out there, they just don't know each other. And it just makes it kind of, the energy together it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It just extrapolates all of the energy. Yeah.
I call it creating a swimming pod like dolphins.
A swimming pod. Yes. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Ned. Well, I'm going to put some of your YouTube stuff on on this YouTube channel. And thank you very much for your time. I really appreciated it.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.